Today, we are going to evaluate the words of an eyewitness who was there during the Building 7 collapse and who, incidentally, after his interview that he put out there, is no longer with us. He has died. And so I'm going to go over some of these things that was said to remind everybody what was put out there. This is not something that is brand new, but more often than not, people have forgotten. And we have a very special guest today that we are going to be discussing all of these things. Now, a report came out in 2009, and this is what it read. Key witness to World Trade Center 7 explosions, dead at 53. Emergency coordinator and 9/11 witness Barry Jennings has passed away with controversy about World Trade Center 7 still hot, as the BBC hit piece and NIST report have been released to counter Jennings' exclusive testimony of explosions inside Building 7. Barry Jennings, now dead at 53, details his eyewitness account while trapped inside World Trade Center 7 on 9/11 in a 2007 interview. Jennings told reporter on the day of 9/11, as well as loose change cameras in 2007, that he heard repeated explosions inside the building before either Tower 1 or Tower 2 collapsed, and testified he was stepping over dead bodies. While exiting the blown-out lobby to the World Trade Center, Barry Jennings, a key 9/11 eyewitness, who was also an emergency coordinator for the New York Housing Authority, has passed away at age 53 from circumstances not yet disclosed. Now, we're going to be playing this interview towards the end today, and after our special guest discusses some very important issues that haven't been properly reviewed yet, and now is about time that this happens, which is what we're going to be doing today. But first, I want to read you the brief transcript of what Mr. Jennings had said. You need to pay attention to this. He states, "When we arrived, the police were in the lobby. Me and Mr. Hess, who I didn't know at the time, got to the 23rd floor. We couldn't get in. We had to go back down. Then police and security took us back to the freight elevators, where they took us back up, and we did get in then. Upon arriving into the OAM POC, we noticed that everybody was gone. Only me and Mr. Hess were up there. After I called several individuals, one individual told me to leave and leave right away. Mr. Hess came running back in and said, 'We're the only ones up here. We've got to get out of here.' He found the stairwell, went down the stairs, and when we reached the 6th floor, there was an explosion and the landing gave way. I was left there hanging, and I had to climb back up, and I had to walk back up to the 8th floor. It was very dark and very hot. I asked Mr. Hess to test the phones as I took a fire extinguisher and broke out the windows. Once I broke out the windows, I could see outside below me. I saw police cars on fire, buses on fire. I looked one way, the building was there. I looked the other, the building was gone. I was trapped in there for several hours. I was trapped in there when both buildings came down. The firefighters came. I was going to come down on the fire hose because I didn't want to stay there because it was just way too hot. They came to the window and started yelling, 'Do not do that, it won't hold you.' And then they ran away. I didn't know what was going on. That's when the first tower fell. When they started running, the first tower started coming down. I had no way of knowing that. And then I saw them come back with more concern on their face. And then they ran away again. The second tower fell. So as they turned and ran the second time, the guy said, 'We will be back for you.' And they did come back. This time they came back with 10 firefighters. They kept asking, 'Where are you? We don't know where you are.' I said I was on the north side of the building because I was on the stairs. I saw the north side all this time and hearing all kinds of explosions. I'm thinking that maybe it's the police cars and the buses that are on fire. I don't see, but I'm still hearing all these explosions. When they finally got to us and they took us down to what they called the lobby, because I asked them, I said, where are we? He said, this was the lobby. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. It was in total ruins. Keep in mind, when I came in there, the lobby had nice escalators. It was a huge lobby. And for me to see what I saw was unbelievable. And the firefighter who took us down kept saying, do not look down. I kept saying, why? We were stepping over people. And you know, when you can feel when you are stepping over people, they took us out through a hole in this wall. That's how they got us out. This huge police officer came over to me and said, you have to run. I said, I can't. My knees are swollen. He said, you'll have to get on your knees and crawl them because we have reports of more explosions. That's when I started crawling and I saw this guy fall behind me, and his comrades came to his aid and dragged him to safety. Later on in the interview, Jennings repeats the fact that he was trapped in the building before both buildings collapsed, citing the fact that first responders ran away twice and came back 3 times to try and get him out of the building. Okay, there is more to this, but I want to introduce to you the gentleman that's going to be going over a lot of this, because there is more that Mr. Jennings had said. Today we have with us Eugene Johnson, who is a mechanical engineer, and he is a project due diligence volunteer for AE 911truth.org. A&E stands for Architect and Engineers. A&E 911 is a nonprofit organization and has over 3,500 credentialed architects and engineers who studied the forensic report by NIST having to do with the collapse freefall of Building 7 and signed a petition refuting their findings as inaccurate. Building 7 collapsed on September 11, 2001 at 5:20 p.m. without being hit by any aircraft, but collapsed in the same manner as the Twin Towers. Thank you, Eugene, for coming back today. You were fantastic in the last interview, and I'll tell you, this information that you're going to be going over today is also explosive. Love having you here.
Excellent. I'm glad to be here.
Well, do you want to go on with what the rest of this said, or do you want me to finish it and then you take it from there?
I'd like to go on and start it.
Okay, go ahead.
I need to get the screen share going here. Here it is. Okay. It's been disabled. What's the matter?
Okay, just a minute. Okay, sorry, Eugene, that was my fault. Go ahead. It should be available now.
No, wait a minute. Don't start it yet. I got to get the...
Okay, Eugene. Interesting technical glitches. I think we got this worked out now. So go for it.
Yes, this is a graphic that shows the World Trade Center complex that was at Lower Manhattan. And what you're looking at is the Twin Towers, and then there's 4 smaller buildings around the towers. And off to the right, which was about 350 feet away from the North Tower, you have Building 7. And you see, looking at Building 7, it's shaped like a trapezoid. Off to the right, you can see the building over here. And it's an enormous building just by itself. It just looks small next to the Twin Towers. And one thing that's interesting is that all 3 of those buildings collapsed into their own footprint. For example, if the towers had tipped over, they would have done considerable damage in the surrounding area, because they stood over a quarter of a mile high, over 1,300 feet. So that would have been a real catastrophe. Of course, it was a catastrophe the way it is. So with regard to World Trade Center 7, approximately 7 hours after the fall of the towers, this 610-foot tall, 47-story steel frame building, not hit by a plane, it collapsed into its own footprint into this 5-story rubble pile in just seconds. Okay, this is a video.
For the third time today. It's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
Did they actually use the word brought down, and who was it that was telling you this?
The fire department, and they did use the word, we're going to have to bring it down.
We heard this sound that sounded like a clap of thunder. It looked like there was a shock wave ripping through the building, and the windows all busted out. About a second later, the bottom floor caved out. The building followed after that, and we saw the building crash down all the way to the ground.
And I turned in time to see what looked like a skyscraper implosion. It looked like it had been done by a demolition crew. The whole thing just collapsing down on itself.
It was almost as if it were a planned implosion. It just pancaked.
Okay, NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, released a 1,000-page report on Building 7 explaining how the government considered the failure. They followed up with a video titled "Why the Building Failed," and this building has had over 2.2 million views. So we're gonna show the video and then go through the different statements inside the video and offer some other explanations. So pause.
All right.
New York City, 2001. No tall building had ever collapsed primarily due to fire. But that's exactly what investigators believe happened to the 47-story World Trade Center Building 7 on September 11th. According to a 3-year comprehensive building and fire safety investigation just completed by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST.
World Trade Center 7 collapsed because of fires. We really have a new kind of progressive collapse that we have discovered here, which is a fire-induced progressive collapse. And in fact, we've shown for the first time that fire can induce a progressive collapse.
NIST used detailed data describing the building and its contents to create the most complex computer simulation of a structure collapse ever made. Falling debris from Tower 1 started fires on 10 floors in Building 7. A break in the city water main from the collapse of the towers disabled sprinklers in the lower half of WTC 7, allowing fires on those floors to burn for 7 hours. The NIST computer model was validated with evidence from videos, photos, witness accounts, and other data. It shows that heat from fires expanded long support beams, causing connections and floors to fail.
So you look at the floors failing here, and eventually this column 79 is going to buckle, it fails, and then the entire vertical progression takes place.
The buckled column caused additional collapsed floors and falling debris that removed support from adjacent interior columns. A chain reaction then caused other interior columns to fail in quick succession. The outside shell of the building fell. The NIST team found no evidence that explosives were involved in the collapse.
And our analysis showed that even the smallest explosive charge that was capable of bringing down the critical column in the building, had it occurred, we would have seen sound levels of 120 to 130 decibels about half a mile away. That would have been an incredibly loud sound, and that sound was not picked up by any of the videos or witnesses that we have talked to.
The team found that World Trade Center 7's design was generally consistent with the relevant building codes when it was built.
Our high-rise buildings in this country are very, very safe. Having a collapse of this nature is a very rare event.
Nevertheless, to ensure that buildings do not collapse in fires, even when sprinklers fail or are not present, the NIST team urges re-evaluation of the fire performance of structures with long-span floors and other design elements similar to WTC 7. The team's report also calls for stronger codes, standards, and practices so that other buildings don't suffer the same fate.
Okay. Okay, NIST said no tall building had ever collapsed primarily due to fire, but that's exactly, but that's not really true, because what we have had in the past are buildings that have burned for several hours and they have never collapsed. So then also, Cheyenne Sunder was the lead investigator, and he said we have a new kind of progressive collapse. And what we found out, it was a global collapse, not a progressive collapse. And it collapsed into its own footprint in 7 seconds with free fall for 2.3 seconds. That's not the signature of a progressive collapse. That's the signature of controlled demolition. And free fall is very important because in the case of free fall, all of an object's potential energy is being converted to motion, and it can't be doing any other work. Thus, the free falling upper section of the C in this drawing could not have been crushing the lower portions or itself during free fall. Section B is not providing any resistance. All of the structure material must have been removed for free fall to occur. The NIST 7 computer model never accelerates at more than 60% of free fall. And this cannot explain the free fall observed in the videos of the collapse. The University of Alaska Fairbanks Civil Engineering Department completed a 4-year study on the collapse of Building 7 in 2018. It was their objective to computer model the building to see if they could recreate the collapse as observed in the videos. They created a finite element model of 7, and that was done by Professor Halsey, who was chairman of the Civil Engineering Department. The principal conclusion of their study is that fire did not cause the collapse of 7, contrary to the conclusions of NIST and private engineering firms that studied the collapse. Their secondary conclusion is that the collapse of 7 was a global failure involving the near simultaneous failure of every column in the building over 8 stories. It's not a progressive collapse involving the sequential failure of columns as claimed by NIST. The simultaneous failure of all core columns over 8 stories, followed by 1.3 seconds later by the simultaneous failure of all exterior columns over 8 stories, produces almost exactly the behavior observed in videos of the collapse. The collapse could have started at various floors, starting at floor 16 and below, and produced the same behavior. NIST said they used detailed data describing the building and its content to create the most complex computer simulation of a structural collapse ever made. However, videos of the actual collapse show that the NIST model does not replicate the observed behavior of the building during collapse. This is going to show the comparison of the two collapses. On the right is the NIST model, and on the left is the video of 7's collapse. The other thing is that on the right side, NIST do not show the complete collapse. They just show it starting to collapse.
Interesting.
NIST said that the falling debris from the tower on Tower 1 started fires on 10 floors in Building 7. Building 7 was about 350 feet away from the North Tower, and there was very little damage from falling debris to the south face of Building 7. The fires could have easily been put out by the fire department. Office fires only burn for a short time due to lack of combustibles in today's digital environment. Fire in the alleged failure area, which is the northeast corner at the 12th floor, had actually burned out an hour before the building collapsed. So this is the south face of the tower. You see there was some damage up toward the top and some damage down here on the lower left. NIST states that the debris damage did not affect the collapse. NIST said a break in the city water main from the collapse of the towers disabled sprinklers in the lower half of 7, allowing fires on those floors to burn for 7 hours. Fire department records show that there was adequate water pressure to put out the fire. However, the firemen didn't go into the building because they were told that the building was going to be brought down. Office fires don't burn in one area for 7 hours. They burn out an area in about 20 or 30 minutes and then move to a fresh area. NIST said that the computer model was valid, that they created was validated with evidence from videos, photos, witness accounts, and other data. However, when you look at the actual model, it shows severe exterior deformation is not, but was not observed in the actual videos, indicating the actual failure mechanisms are not replicated by the NIST model. Okay, this is an explanation, by Sunder's explanation of the progressive collapse. This is the NIST progressive collapse theory. This is an explanation of the progressive collapse theory. And remember, NIST was given the responsibility to determine what caused the building to collapse without using explosives. So this is what they came up with. They show that this is a layout of the 12th floor, and you have up in this corner what NIST said was a fire that had burned for 7 hours, and it heated up these 5 floor beams, which would be the ceiling of 12 and the floor of 13. NIST said that this outside wall was fixed, and it was not. And these beams pushed against this girder and were able to break it loose from column 79 and slide it off of a seat, causing it to fall down. And that broke loose the floor below it and caused a cascade of floors, which exposed this column 79 for 100 feet. And because it didn't have lateral support for 100 feet, it buckled. And that was a domino effect on the remaining 81 columns for the building, and the building collapsed. It was like a Rube Goldberg cartoon. Here's a little better diagram showing what happened. And this is the outside wall, which NIST says was rigid. It didn't flex, so that all the horizontal expansion went to the left toward the girder, and that caused the girder to fall down. Here's a picture showing the northeast corner looking to the west. This is the north side, and you can see the massive area here. It's each one of these floors was about 1 acre in size for office space. This is the girder that these beams pushed against, and you can see the ceiling floor here. It's a steel pan, and then there's 4 inches of concrete poured on top of it to make the floor look like this. And that's a large amount of weight sitting on this girder, pushing down on this girder, and the girder is connected to the column. So in order to push the girder off of the column seat, you'd have sliding friction that would overcome all of that. Here's another picture showing the connection of the girder to the column. It's sitting on the seat over here, and there's 2 bolts at the bottom and 2 bolts at the top. So the question is, were these beams, when they heated up, if it sounds really, it doesn't sound like these beams could get heated up to 600 degrees, but let's just use NIST's story and see whether or not the beams would expand far enough to push the girder off of its seat. And this spreadsheet contains calculation by Chandler and Sambodi, which show net horizontal beam expansion of an unconstrained beam after subtracting horizontal shortening due to vertical sagging. The beams were 53 feet long and supported on each end, so there was some sagging involved, and they would have sagged more when the temperature went up. Calculations show the net beam expansion at 600 degrees is about 5.4 inches. This does not allow walk-off from a 12-inch wide girder seat. So this is the basic reason why the NIST progressive collapse could not get started. The beams just didn't thermally expand horizontally far enough to push the girder off of its seat. And here's another, just a pictorial, a drawing showing how this is the vertical column and this is the girder, and the blue is the force pushing against the girder. So what this is saying is that the blue can break these 4 bolts on 2 on top and 2 on the bottom, and then overcome the friction of the girder sitting on this steel seat. The seat is made up like an L bracket, and the long side of the L would be this plate that's welded to the column. The short side is the seat that's welded to the plate, and then you have the girder sitting on the seat. So there's a huge amount of force required to break the bolts and slide the girder off of the seat. Can we break for a minute?
You know, Eugene, everything that you're saying here, I mean, is fascinating, and it's quite evident that the NIST report is lacking in a lot of ways, but I do have some questions for you. Now, you mentioned earlier that the NIST report had to explain things where they did not use the word explosives. But yet we hear on the Jennings report, and quite frankly, what other people had also said, plus the fact that they found thermite in the dust and so on and so on. Can you just explain to me briefly why they had to do a report that doesn't state explosives when clearly there were multiple witnesses and situations that show that there was? What was the reasoning?
Well, NIST is a part of the Commerce section of the government, and then the Commerce section reports to the executive branch. So it would be my opinion that somebody in that line of chain of command told NIST to come up with a reason why the building failed without using the word explosive. So why that happened, I really don't know, but I think it's pretty obvious that they didn't want the building to come down because of explosives, because that couldn't really be explained by, well, actually building 7 can't be explained, and that's why the media have completely ignored it. Anything that involved building 7 wasn't talked about, even after the University of Alaska came out with their research study showing it wasn't brought down with office fires. The only mainstream media that covered that was the local newscaster up in Fairbanks. National mainstream media didn't cover it. So I guess you have to ask yourself, why is that? Why didn't this collapse of building 7 get more attention? And I guess the reason is they just can't explain it. They can't explain it away with the 19 hijackers. It's an anomaly, and if you agree that it's a controlled demolition, then you have to ask yourself, well, if it was controlled demolition, who created the situation? Who put the explosives in the building? And that had to be planned out months ahead of time. So I guess to answer your question, I don't know.
Well, that's more than fair, and it's honest, because what you have been saying is very compelling, and what also Professor Leroy Halsey was saying, from who did the forensic analysis for the University of Alaska, concurs that what the NIST narrative report is, you don't have 3,500 credentialed architects and engineers signing a petition that is basically stating, after they have read the 1,000+ page report from NIST, saying that it's for the most part bunk. And then you have all of these other peripheral situations coming around. Showing,
you know how in order to get your name on that petition, you had to send them a copy of your diploma, and then they would call you up and talk to you to make sure you were a human being. So those 3,500 degrees certified architects and engineers that signed that petition demanding a new investigation are people that would be designing bridges. So the question is, would you drive across a bridge that NIST?
You just froze there. And so okay, your internet connection is unstable. Interesting. Okay, can you see me? Am I talking?
Yeah, okay.
We're good. Just checking. All right, so with that being said, I got the feeling, because I didn't hear all of it, it froze. It said, would I drive across a bridge that NIST basically did the architecture for? Am I correct that that's for the most part what you said?
Yeah, I was just saying that in the first case, you have an engineering department in the government, and then you have a 3,500 degree certified actual people in the industry. Well, so which one would you, if you came to a bridge and the sign said designed by NIST, would you drive across it?
No, that's an outstanding point. And if you think about it, what is really scary is, I believe it was you, or maybe it was even Professor Halsey, or both of you, said that the NIST report was never really peer reviewed. So
That's
this
true.
in and of itself, 3,500 credentialed architects and engineers are peer reviewing something that, that's a lot of people with credentials to say, this just isn't washing. Along with eyewitness reports, this one gentleman, Jennings, mysteriously dies soon after that. There's some things that really need to be answered. Now, I want to tell you something. I was just contacted by NewsGuard, and NewsGuard does the actual ratings of news agencies. And they were trying to tell me that the information we were putting out from AE 9/11 and for Professor Halsey from the University of Alaska and the years of forensic study and everything in there was quote unquote misinformation, without even looking at exactly what the science was, what the forensics was versus the other. It's blind. It's like, you listen to what NIST says, you do not question it. Interestingly enough, what else does that sound like with other things going on in this world? You don't question the science. Now, you made a statement, or maybe it was Larry Cooper, another engineer that had made the statement. I believe you probably had read his email, that he for the most part said, maybe these individuals that are stating whether or not things are factual or not need to understand a little bit more about the subject matter that they are attempting to rebut. So what do you say to these individuals that are saying this is not true? How do you move forward when you have all these individuals on the petition that say this?
Well, I think that the general public now are starting to question what the government is telling us in a lot of different ways. I think there have been surveys done that have asked people, do they believe the government story with 9/11? And a high percentage say they don't believe the story. So the word is getting out there. What the bottleneck is, the stonewall is the mainstream media. Because if you think about it, the only way that we have now, the only way we have a way of understanding what another option to the story, I guess, would be to say that marketing, or not marketing, but distribution systems in the internet, like your website, are starting to provide other explanations to what's really going on. And I think that's really important. I'm not sure how we can get around that. And that's why it's taken 21 years, because and a new generation is here now who weren't involved at the time that the buildings came down. There's a lot of study that went on. The A&E group didn't get started until 2006, but and you mentioned the 3,500 architects and engineers. So there's no way that we can break through that mainstream media blockage. That's been the problem, in my opinion.
Well, yes, that's part of the problem. The big part of the problem is many people have been indoctrinated to accept without question what they are told from individuals from a position of authority, where it wasn't too many years ago. Critical thinking and strategical thinking, three-dimensional thinking, something that you aren't memorized because somebody told you to think something, using a little bit of deductive reasoning, which we've all been innately born with, but unfortunately has been indoctrinated out of many, is going to have to be brought back. And so the answer is to continue doing this stuff. And we're not telling you what to think. You're not telling them what to think. You are pointing out actual forensics that is part of what engineering is, and building buildings. So people just need to start using their heads and start questioning. Now, when I started out, I was giving this transcript of Jennings. Now, there's some critical questions I'm going to just throw out here for everyone in general. In general, those of you out there that are watching this, these are the critical questions. Why was the emergency room evacuated? Why was Jennings ordered to leave right away? Why was Jennings trapped in the north side of World Trade Center 7 when the south side faced the Twin Towers? Why was the lobby completely destroyed? What did he mean by stepping over people? And why did he claim that there were no bodies? Okay, timeline according to Jennings. Jennings and Hess reach the emergency bunker and are told by phone to leave right away. They descend the stairwell to the 6th floor. Explosions occur and they are trapped on the 8th floor. Firefighters come and tell Barry not to climb down a fire hose because it is too dangerous. Firefighters run away. First tower collapses. 6 firefighters return and look more concerned. Firefighters run away a second time as a second tower collapses. Firefighters return a third time and help Jennings descend World Trade Center 7 to the lobby where it is completely destroyed. And he is told not to look down and that he could tell he was stepping over people. Part of the narrative was, correct me if I'm wrong, that nobody died in Building 7. Am I correct in that?
As far as I know, I don't recall. I think they said that the building had been evacuated, but I don't. That was a gray area. I don't really know what they said at that time.
Well, I'm going to have to look into that a little deeper. It seems to me that they said that there wasn't anyone who died in Building 7, but I'm going to look into that to make certain. Now, keep in mind that the first tower collapse did not significantly damage World Trade Center 7, according to what you were saying and according to also what Professor Halsey said from the University of Alaska. Now, according to NIST, only the bottom windows at the south side of the tower were damaged. Jennings was trapped in the north side of the building and was described the explosive event in World Trade Center 7 taking place before either of the 2 towers collapsed. That's a biggie. Okay, so let's look at this critically, Eugene. With all of this being said, and we see obviously that the NIST narrative just doesn't, for those of us with critical thinking, and I'm not an engineer or an architect, but from what your explanation and also listening to Professor Halsey's, it doesn't make sense. But yet we're told not to think that way. So there are some issues that we need to discuss, and we are going to continue to discuss over the next weeks. I'm going to go ahead and pause this so you can go ahead and get up the video interview from Jennings. Everyone can listen to what he says. Keep in mind that it was just about a year later that he, at the age of, what was it, 54? I'll have to look at this. 53. He was 53 years old, had just inexplainably suddenly died. Okay, so I'm going to pause this so you can go ahead and get to your video.
My name is Barry Jennings, 52 years old. I've worked for 33 years at one location. Basically, that's it. I'm married, father of 4.
That's it. Why don't you tell people your experience from the very beginning of the day on September 11, 2001?
All right. It was, as I told you guys before, it was very funny. I was on my way to work, and traffic was excellent. I received a call that a small Cessna had hit the World Trade Center. And I was asked to go and man the Office of Emergency Management at the World Trade Center 7 on the 23rd floor. As I arrived there were police all in the lobby. They showed me the way to the elevator. We got up to the 23rd floor. Me and Mr. Hess, who I didn't know was Mr. Hess at the time, we got to the 23rd floor. We couldn't get in. We had to go back down. Then security and police took us to the freight elevators where they took us back up, and we did get in. Upon arriving into the OEM EOC, we noticed that everybody was gone. I saw coffee that was on the desk. Still, the smoke was still coming off the coffee. I saw half-eaten sandwiches. And only me, Mr. Hess, was up there. After I called several individuals, one individual told me that to leave and leave right away. Mr. Hess came running back in and said, "We're the only ones up here. We got to get out of here." He found the stairwell. So we subsequently went to the stairwell and we're going down the stairs. When we reached the 8th or the 6th floor, the landing that we were standing on gave way. There was an explosion and the landing gave way. And I was left there hanging. I had to climb back up, and now I had to walk back up to the 8th floor. After getting to the 8th floor, everything was dark. It was dark and it was very, very hot. Very hot. I asked Mr. Hess to test the phones as I took a fire extinguisher and broke out the windows. Once I broke out the windows, I could see outside below me, I saw police cars on fire, buses on fire. I looked one way, the building was there. I looked the other way, it was gone. I was trapped in there for several hours. I was trapped in there when both buildings came down. The firefighters came. They came to the window because I was going to come out on the fire hose. I didn't want to stay there any longer. It was too hot. I was going to come out on the fire hose. They came to the window. They started yelling, "Do not do that. It won't hold you." And then they ran away. See, I didn't know what was going on. That's when the first tower fell. When they started running, the first tower was coming down. I had no way of knowing that. Then I saw them come back. Now I saw them come back with more concern on their faces. And then they ran away again. The second tower fell. So as they turned and ran the second time, the guy said, "Don't worry, we'll be back for you." And they did come back. This time they came back with 10 firefighters. And they kept asking, "Where are you? We don't know where you are." I said, "I'm on the north side of the building," because when I was on the stairs, I saw north side. Excuse me. All this time, I'm hearing all type of explosions. All this time, I'm hearing explosions. And I'm thinking that maybe it's the buses around me that were on fire, the cars on fire. I don't see no, but I'm still hearing these explosions. When they finally got to us, and they took us down to what they called the lobby, because I asked them, I said, when we got down there, I said, "Where are we?" He said, "This was the lobby." And I said, "You got to be kidding me." It was total ruins. Total ruins. Now keep in mind, when I came in there, the lobby had nice escalators. It was a huge lobby. And for me to see what I saw, it was unbelievable. And the firefighter that took us down kept saying, "Do not look down." And I kept saying, "Why?" I said, "Do not look down." And we were stepping over people. And you can feel when you're stepping over people. They took us out through a hole that I don't know who made this hole in this wall. That's how they got us out. They took us out through a hole, through a wall, to safety. As they were taking me out, one firefighter had fallen. I believe he was having a heart attack. But before that, this big giant police officer came to me. And he says, "You have to run." I said, "I can't run. My knees are swollen." He said, "You'll have to get on your knees and crawl in." He said, "Because we have reports of more explosions." And that's when I started crawling. And I saw this guy fall behind me. And his comrades came to his aid. They dragged him to safety. I was looking for an ambulance for my knees. And at that time, they told me, "We got to walk 20 blocks to a refuge." Before I got there, Eyewitness News grabbed me and started interviewing me. And that's basically it.
Now, real quick, I'd like, if possible, for you to elaborate on. Now, you originally said on ABC.
That's as far as he goes right now. There's some questions that the people are asking him after that, but this is essentially his interview.
Well, I'll tell you, this interview is explosive. Okay, Eugene, that video was huge with what Mr. Jennings said. And just a year later, he just suddenly passes on. This completely negates what the report from NIST was saying. And this is an eyewitness. And it isn't just his eyewitness report. There's a multitude of other things that really need to raise questions, and they need to be answered. And I want to thank all of you at not only AE911truth.org and all the architects and engineers that are part of this, but also Professor Leroy Halsey from the University of Alaska and the 4 years of forensic analysis, and the many other people that are coming out that are just, bringing these points. We're not telling you what to think, okay? We're pointing out the science. And so you have been given a lot of information. There's even more if you need it. And I want to thank you, Eugene, for taking the time to explain this to us. We are going to have you back. I don't know if there's any one last statement you want to make before we close out here, but I think we need to have some comments and some discussion down in the comments.
Well, the thing I'd like to stress with regard to what you're saying is to getting the word out is that the architects and engineers have developed a program called Project Due Diligence, And we're available as volunteers to present that to engineering societies or groups of people that would be interested in hearing what the engineers say happened and not what NIST said happened. So let us know, and we have engineers, volunteers that can make these presentations.
Well, excellent. So it is ae911truth.org, ae911truth.org, that you can get a hold of them to be able to have somebody come to either your university or your group or whatever the case is. And let's get this information out there and let people decide for themselves. And also, read the NIST report. Read it. That's good. You make your own decisions.
1,000 pages. See, the engineers with A&E had to read the 1,000-page report, and the Twin Towers had a 10,000-page report. See, I think what they did is they put word salad together, and thinking nobody would look at it.
That seems to be a typical tactic these days. So, but people are looking at it, obviously. Well, thank you again, Eugene, and we'll be back again soon. Bye, everybody.